Hi, and welcome to Managing Self, my presentation to go with my inquiry that I've been doing for the last couple of months. Firstly, as part of our inquiry process, we had to come up with a big question. Now, my big question started as, how should the Managing Self key competency be taught and used in primary schools? And as I went through my research, I also found another relevant strand to be what strategies and tools are being taught in primary schools to enable students to manage themselves. Now, so what? Why bother? What benefits to the students and the teachers? And what tools and strategies exist for us to utilise? Now, covered in this presentation will be what is managing self, why is it important, what do the academics say, is it taught or caught, how can it be taught, linking managing self and self-regulated learning, a very brief look at self-regulated learning, the key strategies, the practicalities, and then finishing with the so what. So, starting with what is managing self? Well, the New Zealand curriculum talks about self-motivation, having a can-do attitude, creating capable learners, making plans and setting goals. It's about students knowing who they are and where they fit in and how they learn. And there's basically three elements to this. There's organisational. Now this is things like having the right things at the right time. It's having all your belongings when you get to school, your drink bottle, your lunch. And it's also about having completed tasks when they were supposed to be completed. Now there's the physical element. This is not only the need to stay fit and healthy as a human, but it's also being able to manage yourself. So in the playground, if I know I learn best because I've had a run at lunchtime, then I go and have a run at lunchtime. And the final element is emotional. So this is your mental well-being. It's knowing who you are as a person, as a learner, and where you fit in. It's also about managing your emotions so that you don't fly off the handle at the smallest thing. Now, I googled managing self, and there's a vast array of things out there, and I quite like this picture. And it covers managing self in four areas: dream, believe, dare, and do. Now, I do believe there's a fifth one missing, which is review. So starting with dream, as Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. So this is having the vision, this is setting the goals, this is kind of kick-starting the process. Move on to believe. Now, part of this is the elephant syndrome, which Nikki talked to us about at OSI. So you can't eat an elephant all at once, but you can if you take small bites. So it's believing that you can do it, and it's overcoming any negativity. So that's down here with the ants. The is dare, and this is taking risks and challenges, seizing opportunities, and knowing that there will be change. So it's working through that process. As Walt Disney also said, all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. And the final is do. So this is, as Walt Disney said again, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So just get on with it, do it, be proactive, take responsibility, stop, think, organise and proceed. And then, as I've said, I believe there's a fifth stage missing, which is review. Now, what is managing self? These are some key words that come from Discovery Time. And they are self-motivation, independence, responsibility, organisation, challenges, responsible risk-taking, plans and choices, goals, persisting and persevering, completing tasks, coping with failure and coping with change. So this moves us on to why is managing self important? Now these points all come from the Nature of the Key Competencies, which is a background paper written by Rosemary Hipkins when the Ministry of Education was reviewing New Zealand curriculum. So it helps develop independence. So this is autonomy as learners, but this doesn't mean learning in isolation. It enables acknowledgement that things change over time. So this is age, ability, the effort that you put in. It's closely linked to participating and contributing. We need to collaborate and cooperate with each other, so we can't manage self in isolation. It's highly correlated with learning access, so from Hattie's visible learning, managing self is one of the important factors. It encourages lifelong learning in today's knowledge society. So the only certainty that we have is that there will be constant change. And so managing self enables us to develop lifelong learning skills that will enable us to cope with this. Gives a sense of identity. So we need to know who we are, especially in this ever-changing world. And cultural diversity. New Zealand is a very diverse nation now, so we need to know where we fit in, and we can only know that by managing self. Now, looking at it from a student's point of view, from managing self, they become enterprising and resourceful, reliable and resilient through the setting of personal goals. They're able to make plans and manage projects. They can set high standards. They develop strategies to meet challenges and know when to use them. And they know when to lead, follow, and act independently. Why is it important for teachers? So if we teach managing self, and if we have students who manage themselves, then they're generally motivated, engaged and enthusiastic students. They know their expectations. We can establish routines and they can be adhered to. Students have more ownership of tasks and so can direct their learning. This enables learning by all students, and consequently there should be less behavioural issues. So a calmer, more relaxing classroom environment that enables better learning by all. Now, what do the academics say about it? So what do academics say about managing self? There are many theorists, as you can well imagine, and these are 5 that influenced my research quite strongly. So there's Zimmerman, Hattie, Alton Lee, Dweck and Bird. Now Zimmerman's has a cycle of learning, and there are 3 phases in this. There's forethought, performance and self-reflection. So the forethought is before the task. This is the task analysis. So breaking it down, setting goals, what needs to be done. It's about making a plan. It's also about self-motivation beliefs. So children actually believing that they can achieve the task and recognizing that it may be a challenge that they're going to have to rise to. The second phase is performance. So this occurs during the task. So this is self-control. So referring back to the goals, the learning intentions and the success criteria. It's self-observation. It's, are you on task? Will you complete the task on time? If not, what do you need to change? And this flows through to self-reflection, which is after the task. So it's self-judgment. How did I do? What worked? What didn't work? And it's self-reaction. So from those thoughts, what could I change? What do my peers say? Through my research, I found a common theme occurring, and that was plan, do, review. Now, I believe that these 3 elements are a bit like the 3 legs of a milking stool, and if you take one of them away, it falls over. So using the Alton Lee research, Rod Galloway uses the value of responsibility to aid self-management. And responsibility was one of the key words that came from Discovery Time. So we can explicitly teach responsibility. So to do it, we develop classroom systems and strategies that allow children to manage their behaviour and their learning. We establish a manageable goal-setting processes. We explore ways to help children understand themselves better, and we teach simple things like time management. Now he came up with this code of responsibility. If I open it, I'll close it. If I turn it on, I'll turn it off, and so on. And the end is, if I manage my own behaviour and learning, I'll know what being responsible really means. Managing self, is it taught or caught? Democratic schools are at the far end of the spectrum in terms of managing self. Now, one of the most famous of these schools is Summerhill School in Suffolk in England. It was set up in 1921 by A.S. Neal, who was quite visionary back then. So this idea has been around for a while. Now, Summerhill take children aged 5 to 16, and they are a private school, so you do have to pay to go there, and they have battled Ofsted, which is the same as our Aero, to keep their licence. They have an emphasis on self-government by pupils. So this is what I mean by, I think that a democratic school believe that managing self is caught, because they believe that through this they learn to compromise, communicate, negotiate and assume responsibility. So the key words for me there were through this. And children at the school have the freedom to attend or not classes. And they say that non-compulsory lessons ensure that children are motivated to learn for their own reasons and they progress at their own speed. Well, I believe even in mainstream classrooms, we can motivate children to learn for their own reasons. Now, can it be taught? Well, self-regulated learning is a theme that I kept coming back to through my research, and linking it with cognitive engagement theory, there are 3 dimensions, each of which needs some support by teachers, so it can't just be taught. So behavioural, this is involvement, this is cooperative participation, it's autonomous, it's self-regulated participation. Emotional, it's about the interest, the enjoyment, the attainment value, so the usefulness of this. What will be achieved and why bother? It's the utility value, it's the cost benefit. So is it worthwhile doing? Can these skills be transferred? And it's the cognitive metacognitive. So it's the investment in learning. So performance versus mastery goals. So for example, a performance goal may be, I'm going to be top in maths, whereas a mastery goal may be, I want to get 90% in my maths test. And it's learning strategies, surface versus deep. So surface ones are things like Bloom's knowledge and comprehension levels, whereas the deep ones are moving students onto the understanding and the evaluation. So it ties in really nicely with inquiry, which aims to move children from knowledge to understanding. Now, all of these things can be achieved through clear, consistent goals and clarity of expectations. So this is developing your success criteria. It's making authentic and challenging classes. So again, this is linking really nicely through to inquiry learning. It's having supportive teachers and a supportive class climate, which enables children to take risks and not be afraid of it. And it's peer acceptance. So it's having your peers support. So it's teaching skills like active listening and cooperation. So the next phase is, how can we teach managing self? How can it be taught? How can managing self be taught? Well, Zimmerman and Kitstantis in 1997 came up with 4 phases. Firstly is observation of the teacher. So the skill is modelled. The second phase is imitation. So the learner tries the skill and gets feedback on how they went with the skill. Thirdly, it's self-control. So the student is proficient in the skill, so doesn't need the model. And finally, it's self-regulation, so they can adapt the skill to use in new ways and new circumstances. Now, one of the key elements to managing self is knowing self, and there are many, many ways to discover this. Here's 3. There's Gardner's multiple intelligences, and I'm sure we've all done the test, and this gives us 9 different types of learners. Then there's the treasure tree based on a book, and this gives us 4 types of learners. Then there's VAK learning style, so the visual, auditory or kinesthetic. Now these are great for discovering preferences, so students' strengths, and also their weaknesses. So students know what will challenge them and what they need to work on. Now, as a teacher, we need to develop rounded individuals, so we need to cultivate a range of intelligences. So we should be focusing not only on the strengths of what the student likes doing, but also on their weaknesses so that we ensure that we do this. So through all the reading and research that I've done, managing self and self-regulated learning are clearly linked. Dr. Bird, the current principal of QPS, did a thesis in 2009 that was entitled Developing Self-Regulated Learning Skills in Young Students, as she found that there was a real gap in the research literature out there about primary school age children. Now, I started my process looking at self-regulated learning and broadened it out to managing self, but then lots and lots of the research that I've done and the readings bring managing self back to self-regulated learning. So I thought it was quite important we have a quick look at that. Now, Dr. Bird states that this key competency group, managing self, encompasses key features of self-regulated learning, that is, the setting and achieving of goals, time management, planning, self-monitoring, self-evaluating, and taking control of one's learning. She goes on and says, one of the 5 key competency groups to be developed by all students is managing self, whereby students establish personal goals, make plans, manage studies, set high standards, and have strategies for meeting challenges. And these are key self-regulated strategies that have been identified through her study. So self-regulated learning is all about enabling students to manage their learning. One phase of this is goal setting. So this is part of my plan phase. So teachers valued goal setting as they recognised it impacted positively on student motivation. And then through to my final stage of review, this enabled their students to reflect on themselves as learners and empower them to continue the learning cycle. View of self-regulated learning as a lifelong set of skills and attitudes that benefits the learner, which is very important. So next is self-regulated learning. Let's just have a really quick look at that. So a self-regulated learner is one who sets and monitors personal goals, controls their own learning and environment, monitors their process against models and exemplars, reflects regularly, and can articulate their next learning steps. So for example, a Year 7-8 class, by Term 4 they may be running their own timetable. But all of these things can be done in a small way by basically looking at plan, do and review. And then you can pick and choose which tools and strategies work for you and fit in with your philosophy and the philosophy of the school. So what are the managing self key strategies? What are they? So planning. We need to find out prior knowledge. Students need to have clear goals and a plan. And to get this, they need to use the WALTs. We need to co-construct the success criteria with them. We need to use modelling and exemplars. Having said that, we must also be very careful when using exemplars that we don't get 90 replicas of what we've put up. The goals must be personal and achievable. And we need to give students a choice. Now all of this sets the students up for success. They know what they need to do, they know what's expected of them. This lays the foundations. Now the next phase of do. They need to decide on the tools and strategies needed to do the task. And to do this they need to know themselves and they need to be given a wee bit of choice and some freedom. We need to refer them back to the WALT and the success criteria. So by monitoring performance they can get back on track should they deviate. We can give them a choice to manage their learning environment, so they can use tools such as Carey, CD players and stars, which I'll come to next. Students can seek help and clarification where needed, so we need to encourage this. But the teacher needs to question, not necessarily answer, and scaffold, not spoon feed. So review. We need to self-assess against goals. What was achieved? If not the goal, why not? What could be changed next time? We need to encourage peer assessment against the goals. So this gives students valuable feedback from their peers, which aids with problem solving, and it gives another viewpoint. We need to be giving quality feedback. So this is specific, using the goals as a benchmark. It can be verbal to help with the immediacy and the relevance, as much of the research shows that quality feedback is done in a timely manner. And we need to aid with the development of next steps. Reflection time needs to be given, so this enables the task to be fully evaluated. Now another part of reflection time could be performance and sharing time. So this is whereby students learn from each other. So some students will present or share their findings from perhaps an inquiry project. So what roadblocks did they have to overcome? And this helps others to think through their problems and reflect on how they managed to achieve their goals. And it encourages questioning and so deeper evaluation, and it consolidates the understanding. So whilst you're answering questions, maybe you're making new links. So from the reviewing of the task, students are then able to adapt any goals and plans to incorporate the new learning. Having looked at the managing self strategies, now let's look at the practicalities of this. So firstly, goal setting. We can start this from new entrants in a very simple way. They need to be SMART goals. They need to be worded in the right way, and by this I mean they need to be about understanding, so having a process focus with a positive mindset rather than performance with a product focused fixed mindset. So this is going back to the I want to be top versus I want to get 90%. So in a new entrance class, every morning the children pick their photo and put it against the goal that they want to achieve. Then at the end of the day, the teacher scaffolds a discussion about whether their goals were achieved. My daughter's class, a Year 1 class, they have these goals, and again they choose their goal for the day, put it next to their photo, and then at the end of the day they have a discussion about whether they achieved them. Now, what's been really fascinating for me is they've been going up to the teacher and asking her to write their own goals. So this shows me that they are starting to critically think about goal setting, which is amazing given they're 5 years old. This is one of the self-regulated learning goals for self-motivation, and there are 4 others which are listed there. Now, these goals start from things like, I can set a goal related to my learning, which maybe you're doing at kind of year 3 or 4, moving right through to, I can accurately reflect on my learning and identify the steps taken to achieve my learning goals. I reward myself for my successes. So you'd expect children, if they're on a self-regulated learning path, to be up there at probably about year 8. So we also need to establish routines and expectations. We need to be consistent. We need to use the language of managing self. We need to use on-off task checks, and we'll see those when we look at learning logs. And we can use things like stars. Now, stars are sayings that allow regulated study. And these need to be developed with the students. And it's things like, I am trying to concentrate. Please come back later. I am going to buckle down and work. Please do not disturb me. Shh. This is a task I have to do now. And these can be on laminated card, and the students put them on their desk, on their laptop, on the back of their chair, just to show everybody else that they don't want to be disturbed. That we can have corrals available. So this is basically a 3-sided cardboard box that a student can put on their desk and decorate it with some stars that indicate to everybody else to leave that person in peace. We can also have the playing of Baroque music. So why Baroque music? Well, Daly and Ward in 1993 identified that it's the 1 beat per second of Baroque music that is so important. So this is Vivaldi's Four Seasons, very poorly recorded, but it will give you an idea. So this 1 beat per second emits a greater proportion of beta and theta brain waves. This activates our right side of our brain, and that allows us to be more receptive. It helps move information from short to long-term memory, and this enables learning to occur more rapidly. Other things we can use are timeout capsules. So these again are a 3-sided area, but these have no distraction, so they're not decorated in any way, and inside them they may have things like headphones to block out any noise. Now there's also a creative art area as a great idea, and learning logs. So here is an example of the on-off task. So during the lesson you might call out, check, and then students look, are they on task or off task? And they put a tick, and that's for them to know and for them to monitor. So using the learning log, you can look at what are today's goals, what do I need to complete, and then how am I going to do this? Then at the end of the day, they can self-assess. So having a look at, did they manage their time well? Is their work of a good standard? And then they can plan ahead for tomorrow. We need to give feedback, and we've talked a little about how that feedback should happen. And we need to give access to test results. So we have to do lots of testing in our classroom. And by giving results to the students, they can see how well or not that they've done, and they can think of strategies to improve those results. Or if they didn't do as well as they thought, why not? Now, reflection and review, this is one of my legs on my 3-legged stool. So we can't do without reflection and review. Doing it. So there's the thinking cloud. This again is in my daughter's class. So did I do my best? Did I work hard? What can I do better tomorrow? And then in a year 3, 4, it's reflection and action. So these are all prompts. These are all statement starters. As they get through the school, they should be able to come up with their own. And finally, we need to have the use of pedagogical practices. So these are the practices such as using the waltz, co-constructing the success criteria, assessment, giving feedback, and developing next learning steps. So what? What does this all mean? So as teachers, we need to focus on students' well-being and their achievement. And so, by setting clear expectations, we're enabling students to set goals and to plan. By giving students the tools, strategies, and choices to do the task, this enables them to achieve their goals. By giving feedback and allowing reflection, this enables students to track their learning, set next steps, and make any changes needed. Managing self should be an integral part of what we teach so that we can help develop our students into the lifelong learners they need and deserve to be. And one final thought, courtesy of Trishinda. Pick up your oar. So this is ownership, accountability, responsibility. Or go back to bed with blame, excuse, and denial. So where to for me? Well, I'd love to do some more research on feedback, what makes it effective, plus goal setting. These are two massive areas of research, and there's so much out there, but within the time constraints of this inquiry, I'm afraid I've skimmed the surface, and I'd love to go back and look at more. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I would love to have your feedback. Thanks.